It was a quiet evening when everything changed. I had just finished another long day, tending to the fields and making sure the cattle were fed before calling it a night. But as I walked back to the house, something didn't feel right. The air was thick, charged. I looked out over the land that had been in my family for generations. It was my pride. Cedar Valley Ranch, 1,800 acres of rich soil, forests, freshwater lakes, and the history of my great-grandfather who had built that barn by hand in 1941. He poured everything into it, and so did I. But tonight, I wasn't the only one who had their eyes on it. I heard the rumble of engines, the unmistakable growl of bulldozers coming from the hill behind the barn. I froze, and then the shout echoed through the night. "I want everyone off this land now." The voice came from a man standing tall on one of the bulldozers, dressed in a navy blue vest with the HOA logo on it, like he was some sort of king of the world. And behind him, there were 6 more bulldozers lined up, waiting to tear into everything I had ever known. I ran toward them, my heart pounding, my arms flailing in the air. "What are you doing?" I yelled, my voice shaking. "This is my land." He jumped off the bulldozer, smirking. "Correction, it was your land. It was auctioned off last week. The new owners want to build a tennis court here." I felt my stomach drop. Auction off? Who in the world would take my land? I was still in shock when he pulled out a piece of paper from his clipboard, barely glancing at it. "The HOA took possession due to unpaid assessments. It's all legal. You'll have to take it up with the city. Good luck with that." I grabbed the paper from his hand. "This is a lie," I said, my voice now a low growl. "I don't even live under your HOA. This land has never been part of your association." But it didn't matter. In a matter of minutes, they had set up fences, brought in trucks, and started marking the land with red flags. I stood frozen, watching them turn my legacy into rubble. That was the day the HOA illegally sold my ranch. They thought they had won, but they had no idea that I wasn't going to just roll over. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. Let me back up for a second. My name is Jake Walker. I'm 38 years old, a retired military engineer, and the proud owner of Cedar Valley Ranch. This land had been in my family for 4 generations, long before the HOA even existed. The land was my roots. It was home. But over the years, the HOA, a bunch of self-important people with too much time and money on their hands, had been trying to claim it. They'd sent me letters, fines, notices for things like my cows being too loud or my barn being an eyesore. And I ignored them because, well, I thought it was just noise. Empty threats from people who had nothing better to do. That is, until Claire Benson became president. Claire. Well, Claire was different. She was the kind of woman who wore heels to walk her dog. You know the type. She called the cops if your fence wasn't painted the right shade of beige. The moment she took over as president, she set her sights on beautifying the area. And I wasn't on her list of things to beautify. One morning, my neighbor, Patrick, came knocking on my door. He looked worried, waving an envelope in front of me. "Jake, man, I just got this letter," he said. "It says the HOA is expanding its authority, and you're on the map." I raised an eyebrow. "Buffer zones?" "Yeah," Patrick scratched his head. "They're saying they're incorporating these buffer zones, and your land is part of it. They passed a new charter with the county, and there was a meeting last week. Of course, you weren't invited." Of course, I wasn't, I muttered under my breath. I'm not part of their little kingdom. But when Patrick mentioned real estate agents had been spotted nearby, that was the first real warning sign. And I ignored it. How could they claim land that had been in my family since 1904? 2 weeks later, my cousin Drew called me, furious. "Jake, are you selling the ranch?" he asked. "What? No, what?" "Because there's a flyer right here," he said. "The HOA is promoting new developments on some pristine ranch land, and your pawn's on the photo. I think they're targeting you." I jumped in my truck and headed straight for the Maple Heights HOA office. There, I met Claire face to face. "I'd like to know why my land is on your development flyer," I said, trying to keep my cool. Claire didn't even look up from her computer. "Sir, everything we do is by the law. If your land had been properly maintained and in compliance, maybe you'd be part of the community instead of a nuisance." That was the last straw. I lost it. "This land isn't yours." I shot back. "It's not part of your HOA. I have the original deed, signed in 1904 by the governor of this state." She gave me a fake smile. "Feel free to challenge it in court, but I think you'll find we're quite organized." I walked out of there, rage building inside me, but I didn't go home. I drove straight to the county registrar's office. And there, I found it. The forged paperwork. Somebody had submitted a corrected boundary map claiming that Cedar Valley Ranch was now part of the Maple Heights HOA. And it was signed by J.M. Walker. Only, I don't even have a middle name. Someone had faked my signature, filed altered documents, and passed them off at an auction. The worst part? The buyers were already moving in. They thought they owned my land. I knew I couldn't fight this with just anger. I needed proof. I needed to be smarter. So, I called my lawyer, Helen Brooks. She's sharp, fierce, and she used to be a judge. When she saw the documents, her face changed. "Jake, this is bigger than you think," she said. "Whoever did this committed felony-level fraud. But proving it will take time." "I don't want time," I said. "I want justice." She leaned back in her chair, a smile creeping up her face. "Well, you might just get it. Did you know that the land under the HOA properties was once owned by a private developer? And that developer defaulted on taxes. It's now a public lien. That land is technically for sale at tax auction next month." I blinked. "Wait, are you saying?" "I'm saying," she continued, "if you have the right paperwork and some quick financing, we can buy the land under their homes." And that's exactly what I did. I sold some cattle, scraped together every dollar I had, and in a quiet online auction that lasted just 7 minutes, I legally bought the 75-acre parcel under the HOA. Every home, every garden, every pool, they still owned their houses, but not the land beneath them. Then, I filed a notice of land use change. I made it a private agricultural ranch, no residential leasing permitted. They either had to move out or pay me rent. And not cheap rent. Just as I was getting ready to serve them the notices, Claire came knocking on my door. She wasn't smiling anymore. "We need to talk," she said through clenched teeth. But before she could say another word, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into my driveway, sirens blaring. 2 deputies stepped out, heading straight for her. "Claire Benson," one of the deputies called out, walking toward her with purpose. "You're under investigation for filing fraudulent land documents and impersonating a property owner." Claire's face drained of color. She froze. "No, there's been a mistake. I'm the president of the HOA." She started to protest, but the other deputy was already reading her rights. I stood back, folding my arms, and watched as they led her away. She yelled at me, "This isn't over. You can't take Maple Heights away from us." But I already had. Even with Claire out of the picture, the battle wasn't over. Todd Granger, the vice president of the HOA, sent me a letter the very next day, asking for a private meeting. But I knew better. He was trying to make a deal. The war wasn't just about the land anymore. It was personal. Then, one night, I woke up to the sound of a gunshot. I grabbed my shotgun and moved silently through the house. Outside, 2 figures were skulking near the south field, moving like they knew the land. I chased them barefoot, but by the time I reached the clearing, they were gone. The cameras had gone black for 3 minutes. They had jammed the signal. I knew they were testing me, and I knew I had to get smarter. So, I contacted Monroe and Phillips, 2 federal agents investigating Langley's network. And together, we set a trap. We caught them. 4 men, including the Maple Heights treasurer. They were caught trying to destroy evidence of the fraud. And that was the beginning of the end for Langley. It wasn't just about land anymore. It was about standing up, fighting back, and making sure that no one could steal from you, no matter how big they were. Langley's empire collapsed, and his name trended for all the wrong reasons. In the end, the documentary series Ranch vs. HOA went viral. I'd won. But the final blow came when I got a letter from Langley, delivered from behind bars. It was a photo of me standing in front of my barn before it was burned down, with a message written in red ink. "This isn't about land anymore." And I knew right then that this was just the beginning. Because I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. What do you think? Was it justice, or did I go too far? Let me know in the comments below. What would you have done if someone tried to take your land? Let's talk about it.